Welcome to the deep dive. So you're interested in the stewardess career path, huh? Well, these RoleCatcher excerpts, they really take us deeper. Like, beyond those typical ideas about the job. Let's unpack those realities.
It is kind of fascinating. You've got this blend of demanding customer service, but then those super strict safety protocols, and it's all happening within, well, the unique environment of travel.
Okay, so imagine this. You're a stewardess just starting your day. This RoleCatcher guide, it really stresses adaptability right off the bat. It's not just about dealing with people, though. You got to think on your feet when unexpected stuff pops up. Keep your cool.
Right. Remember those veterinary emergencies the guide mentions? It's a good point. Stewardesses have got to be ready for anything, even, unexpected situations involving animals. Imagine dealing with, say, a passenger who's a nervous wreck about flying with their pet, and then, bam, turbulence hits.
Yeah, suddenly that whole coffee, tea, or me image kind of goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about serving drinks. It's about handling all sorts of curveballs and doing it gracefully under pressure. Speaking of pressure, the guide talks about those really demanding passengers. What struck me was how much it emphasized active listening and clear communication.
Yeah, those skills, they're more powerful than people realize. The guide talks about acknowledging the passenger's concerns, offering solutions. Sometimes just feeling heard is what really makes the difference.
So it's more about de-escalating with empathy and professionalism rather than, getting into a power struggle.
Exactly. But the guide does acknowledge that a smile and a listening ear, well, they don't solve everything. Sometimes you got to know when to bring in a supervisor, maybe even security, especially if safety's on the line.
Right, because there are times when sticking to the rules, following those company protocols, that's really important. And speaking of protocols, the guide spends a lot of time on emergency procedures. We're not just talking about pointing out exits here. It's about being a first responder, whether you're in the air, on a ship, or even on a train. What kind of training does the guide recommend to handle those situations?
It really pushes for comprehensive training, and not just the basics like first aid and CCR, but a whole range of emergency scenarios. Medical emergencies, security threats, even knowing what to do with hazardous materials.
Wow, sounds like you need to be ready for anything. It's definitely not just about being friendly and remembering drink orders. It's a very demanding job, requiring a really diverse skill set. Which makes me think about career progression. And thankfully, the guide delves into that too. It actually lays out a clear path from entry level all the way up to head stewardess.
That's right. It outlines different career stages, and each one comes with more responsibility. It's not a dead-end job at all. There are real opportunities to move up, take on leadership roles.
Let's break those stages down a bit. What does the guide say about the responsibilities at each level?
So at the entry level, you're mostly assisting the more senior staff, getting a feel for how things work. The guide mentions things like taking orders, setting up, keeping things clean. It's all about mastering those basics.
Right, so a lot of learning the ropes, finding your rhythm in the job.
Exactly. But then as you move up to junior stewardess, you get more independence. Think handling cash, maybe helping plan the menu, even training new staff.
You're not just following orders anymore. You're actually starting to lead, manage a bit. Seems like a pretty natural progression. What comes after that on this career ladder?
Well, according to the guide, the next step up is senior stewardess. And that's where those leadership skills, they really matter. Imagine supervising a whole team, managing the dining area, handling passenger complaints, working with other departments. It's definitely more responsibility, requires you to stay calm under pressure.
So you're not just serving meals. You're basically running the show,
Yeah.
right? Orchestrating the whole dining experience. Sounds like a whole other skill set.
Totally. And finally, the guide talks about reaching, well, the top. Head stewardess, that's where it really takes off.
That's got a nice ring to it. What does the guide say about the responsibilities at that level?
Think of it like you're the captain of the onboard service. You're overseeing the entire operation. So that's, developing service standards, managing budgets, making sure you're following all those regulations, even negotiating with vendors. It becomes a very strategic position.
Wow, so it's not just about knowing the menu inside and out. We're talking business skills, leadership on a whole other level.
You got it. And the guide's really clear about one thing. No matter what stage you're at, never stop learning. This industry, it never slows down.
And speaking of things that never slow down, the guide brings up, well, elephant in the room. Or should I say passenger in the room? Technology. It does mention how technology is changing food service, but I'm curious about the bigger picture. How does the guide see technology reshaping the role of stewardesses in general?
That's a million-dollar question, right? And honestly, the guide only kind of touches on it. It mentions online ordering systems, automated payments, stuff like that, which obviously makes things more efficient.
Sure, those advancements can definitely streamline things. But what about that human element?
That's the heart of it all, isn't it? While technology can make things more efficient, it's really those human interactions that make or break the travel experience. The guide actually suggests that those core soft skills, empathy, communication, problem solving, they're only going to become more important as technology takes over those routine tasks.
So as technology keeps advancing, it's not about stewardesses being replaced. It's about them using those uniquely human skills to offer even more personalized service. It becomes less about logistics, more about making real connections with people.
Exactly. And that brings up another fascinating aspect of this job, one that's often overlooked. The guide touches on like the chance to meet people from all walks of life, but it doesn't really explore the growing need for cultural sensitivity. It's one thing to travel the world, it's another to navigate all those different cultures with sensitivity and, well, grace.
That's such a good point, especially in today's world where everyone's so connected. It's not enough to just speak the language. You got to understand and appreciate those cultural differences, right?
Sure. What might be considered polite in one culture could be totally off in another. It's about being aware of your body language, your tone of voice, even those small, subtle cues that can make or break an interaction.
So how does the guide recommend people prepare for that side of the job?
It really stresses cultural sensitivity training. It suggests that stewardesses, they should actively learn about different customs, different ways people communicate. The world's a diverse place, and the skies are even more so.
Makes total sense.
No.
But let's be real for a sec. Being a stewardess isn't all cultural exchanges and, managing difficult passengers. It's a job, and people need to know if it pays the bills.
You're right, that's a big one. And the guide, well, it kind of drops the ball there. It mentions good salary as a pro, but it's surprisingly vague on the financial side of things. No specifics about starting salaries, raises, benefits. Not very helpful for someone considering this career.
True, good is pretty subjective. What's good for one person might not be enough for another. What about things like health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off? Those are huge factors.
You're telling me. Those are essential, and the guide is oddly silent on those details. It mentions travel opportunities as a perk, but that doesn't exactly cover your dental plan, does it?
It is a bit frustrating that such an important aspect is kind of glossed over. So for our listeners who are thinking about this path, what would you recommend they do to get a better picture of the financial side?
Honestly, I'd say go beyond those like general career guides. Look into resources that are specific to the travel industry, websites, job boards, those salary comparison tools. That's where you'll find the real nitty-gritty about pay and benefits.
Makes sense. Those resources can give you a much more detailed view than a general career overview.
Exactly. And, don't be afraid to ask about compensation and benefits when you're in an interview. It's your right to know, and it shows potential employers that you're thinking long term. But get this.
Like I does.
The guide talks about a good salary, right? But when I looked at some external resources, it was a bit more complicated. Like entry-level positions, it seems like they can range from, say, $6 to dollars per year. And of course, that can vary depending on the airline, location, experience, all of that.
Yeah, that's way more useful than just hearing good. At least it gives you some real numbers to work with, compare.
Right. And then when you factor in those benefits, health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off, that's when you get the full picture. Those things can make a big difference in your overall compensation.
For sure. And speaking of those extra perks, the guide does touch on travel opportunities, which, let's face it, can be a huge draw for a lot of people. Were there any other benefits specific to the travel industry that the guide might have missed?
Oh, good point. The guide doesn't really go into detail, but those industry resources I mentioned, they often talk about travel stipends, flight discounts, even perks for accommodation. Those can be pretty significant, especially if you're someone who loves to travel in your free time.
It's like getting paid to travel, even on your days off. So I guess the takeaway here is don't just take the guide's word for it when it comes to salary. Do your own research, check out those industry-specific resources, and don't hesitate to ask those tough questions in interviews.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? And when it comes to travel and hospitality, it's a competitive world. Making informed decisions is key to having a successful, rewarding career.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From those demanding passengers to the amazing cultural experiences, the importance of cultural sensitivity, the financial realities, it's clear. Being a steward-stewardess is about way more than just serving drinks at 30,000 feet.
No doubt. It's a challenging job, but also incredibly rewarding. It takes a special kind of person, someone with the right mix of skills, resilience, and of course a passion for people and travel.
And as we've seen, it's a role that's always changing, right along with technology and the world of global travel.
Right.
So for those of you listening who are intrigued by hospitality and adventure, the guide is a good starting point. But just like with any journey, being prepared and eager to learn will take you far.
Couldn't agree more. It's all about embracing those uniquely human qualities. Empathy, adaptability, cultural awareness. Those are things no robot can replicate.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of steward-stewardesses. Hopefully you've learned some new things, maybe even gained a whole new appreciation for the folks who grace the skies with, well, grace, resilience, and a friendly smile.
Until next time, safe travels, everyone. And remember, there's always something new to discover.